It's up to you. I don't know. You know you're a crowd.
L'chaim, everybody. Someone asked me downstairs, what is the right greeting for Yud Shevat? In all honesty, I don't know. Rabbi Weg said, we'll Farbrengen about it, but I did think of something while we were singing, and that is, I think the proper greeting would be Yechid, or Chai, or Chaim, life. I'm not going to be speaking tonight, so this is my one and only. So do not worry. But actually, we know that Yud Shevat marks, we could say a transition, we could mark a continuation, but essentially the previous Lubavitch Rebbe was the Rebbe of Chabad Lubavitch, and he planted the Chabad Lubavitch movement from Europe to America in 1940, was actively the Rebbe for 10 years, and of course he was ably assisted by his son-in-law, the present Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe of Chabad. I don't like saying his name, but his name was, as the Tzemach Tzedek, Rabbi Nachum Mendel. After those 10 years, and the previous Lubavitch Rebbe passed away on a Shabbos, it was on the 10th day of Shvat, immediately after the burial, Hasidim sort of said to the son-in-law, you're the next Rebbe. And in his humility, and there are many other reasons that we'll never know why, he refused to acknowledge. He said, the Rebbe is the Rebbe. If you have, what I could do is I could convey your wishes to the Rebbe. But basically the Rebbe hasn't died. The Rebbe has merely changed location. And I will not be the Rebbe of Lubavitch. We only have one Rebbe. His name was Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, and he's still living. And of course, this is true. And yet, a Rebbe is someone that has to be the head of the Jewish people, and the head has to be connected to a body, and the people needed a physical head. Anyway, this was going on. There's many, many wonderful stories about how Hasidim tried to get the Rebbe to acknowledge that he is going to be the next Rebbe, or that he is the next Rebbe. He said, I'm just giving advice, I'm not a Rebbe. To make the long story short, when the year was over, Hasidim gathered, and the young Rebbe, our Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe of Chabad, began talking. And one of the elder Hasidim jumped up and said, we love the talks. The talks are inspiring, but we want to hear a mimer, because a mimer is only a Rebbe could say. An inspiring holy talk can be said by other people, not only a Rebbe. But a mimer, a Hasidic discourse, so to speak, getting inspiration from heaven and just being a funnel of God's word, that only a Rebbe could do. And sure enough, in the middle of the Rebbe's talking about the previous Rebbe, he began to say a mimer. When that happened, immediately the Hasidim, hearing this, stood up with the respect that's necessary to hear a mimer. And afterwards, this old Chassid jumped up on the table, and he said, I don't know if he said the word Mazel Tov, but I think he said, Mazel Tov merhaben al Rebbe. Congratulations, we have a Rebbe. And I think that's really the theme of Yud Shevat. The theme of Yud Shevat is, we have a Rebbe. And Ashreinu Matoiv Chalkeinu, how fortunate are we that we're his very close disciples, and how fortunate is the seventh generation, the present situation in this world, that they have a Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, who today took over his leadership. So first of all, l'chaim, melept. We have to live as Chasidim, l'chaim, l'bracha. Tonight we're very fortunate because we have a guest. He's been a chassid for a very long time. He's also been running the Chabad activities for 31 years or 32 years in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is known as a bustling metropolis of Judaism. And essentially, when the great rabbi landed, there was a red star, there was a red carpet reception for him, and as you can understand, life has been roses for this young man. But basically, he's a chassid of the Rebbe, and he started what very few people could start, and that is to actually bring Yiddishkeit to a place where there hasn't been Yiddishkeit. So without any further ado, he is a chaver, he's a companion, a friend, and I give you Rabbi Yehuda Weg. Yeah.
The Baal Shem Tov says, Avu Ayid Geit Muzagen Nochamal, that wherever a Jew was, he needs to ultimately come back. So I was here almost 40 years ago, and now I'm back. So we see that the words of the Baal Shem Tov. Many of the ideas that Rabbi Hecht touched upon, I hope that perhaps we'll have a chance to expand on them. But just the whole idea of a Farbrengen, the fact that we're getting together and so on, is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity. The fact that we have this day, this important day, and that we're getting together and we're having a Farbrengen is in itself tremendously valuable and useful. And I can give you an example of what it means to be useful in terms of Farbrengen. I had a personal experience that I'm going to share with you. Some of the shluchim here will know some of the people that I mentioned. They perhaps will remember them. Some of them for sure will remember them. And therefore, if I end up saying a phrase or mentioning a person that you're not familiar with, you'll forgive me because there are others perhaps that do recall that. The idea that we could attach ourselves to the Rebbe and do what the Rebbe wants is expressed primarily in the idea of shlichus, the idea that the Rebbe establishes that there are shluchim that can go out in his name. It's not really capable for a person on his own to go to a place like Oklahoma and spend 32 years over there and have a minyan 3 times a day and okay. By the way, I just want to explain. We have not only 1 minyan a day. We have several times a day. We have several minyanim 3 times a day. None of them are in Oklahoma. There are people who graduated, so to speak, from our Chabad house today. They're Baruch Hashem all over the world, including the West Coast, the East Coast, and Eretz Yisrael, and so on, many places around the world. And they daven with a minyan 3 times a day. The rabbi doesn't, but they came from Oklahoma, and therefore Oklahoma, in some sense, has a minyan. Huh? The rabbi from Oklahoma doesn't daven with a minyan. Anyway. Not too often. I mean, we do that once in a while. We have to remember what it's all about. And so on. Anyway, we had a Farbrengen that ended up being a tremendous opportunity for us, and I'll share with you some of that what happened. I was fortunate to be in the yeshiva in Morristown. Morristown was Gan Eden. It was literally the perfect situation. I remember once guys were complaining about the food or something, and one of the teachers over there was literally flabbergasted. He couldn't understand. He said, he said, you're like the Jews in the desert, where the manna literally falls down from heaven. Moses himself is teaching you. Your clothes go with you. Everything's provided for you. You don't have to walk out of this entire building from an entire year. Everything you need is provided for you in the best way. And you're complaining still? Sound like the Jews in the desert. He said that they had everything and still somehow they managed to find what to complain about. So life was very good in Morristown. Okay, and our class was the first time that somebody had been there for 3 years. Most classes were there for either 2 years or 1 year. Our class was the first time, and technicalities that are not important right now. Anyway, but it was coming toward the end of the 3rd year, and we realized that soon a group of shluchim will be chosen from among the yeshiva. Not everybody is going to end up going. There's going to be a specific group of students that are going to be sent, that the Rebbe himself will send them as mentors and older students to one of the yeshivas, and we were. Our class was coming up. It was that time, and we were very anxious. Actually the only thing that we really, really wanted was to be able to go on shlichus. That this way we have a connection to the Rebbe from morning to night. Our entire existence will be exactly what the Rebbe wants. I had a conversation with one of my guys. So he was whatever. He was a little down. So I explained to him he really needs to know what his life is all about. He can start to focus on things that are really important and so on. So I used a throwaway line. I didn't mean much with it. I happened to mention said how many people are there in the world already that really know what they get up for every morning? They know what their life is all about. And he said, about 5,000. Shluchim, they understand what, and we can all, benefit from that and so on. Especially those of you that are here have shluchim, like Rabbi Hecht and Mrs. Hecht and others that are here. You're very fortunate. You should take advantage of that. Anyway, this is what we really wanted. Okay, as it turned out, the heads of the yeshiva in New York would come to New Jersey, Morristown, New Jersey, once a year to test the class. It was an oral exam, and they would go from class to class, and they would give an exam to each and every student. Okay, so we knew that they were coming. We were told a couple of weeks in advance. We started to prepare for it and to review that which we had done and so on. Anyway, sure enough, the day came, and the Hanhola from New York, the administration from New York, the heads of the yeshiva from New York, the central yeshiva came to test us, and they went, as I just described, they went from class to class, and they tested each of the classes. They did it fairly quickly. They started early in the morning, and so on. By lunchtime, which was about 2:15, they finished. So but the last class was finished just about 2:15, and we went down to eat lunch. That was lunchtime in the yeshiva. Okay. While we're sitting and eating lunch, suddenly a guy's running around, and he's saying that Rabbi Mentlik, who's the head of the yeshiva in New York, he said he's about to go back to New York, but he wants to speak to everybody before he leaves. Now again, this is the third year that we had been there. This had never happened before. Something was funny. And we all, were very cynical and so on, young students. So we came up, we're sitting in the study hall, and the Rosh Yeshiva was sitting there. We used to call them, the state troopers, because they had big hats. So the state troopers are, sitting there, and what's called, and everybody says, well, what's this all about? Why is he calling us in the middle of lunchtime? What is he supposed to be doing? And nobody knows. Everybody's shrugging their shoulders. Nobody knows. Finally, Rabbi Mentlik gets up. Now, if you know Rabbi Mentlik, he was the one who poured the Rebbe's wine. Okay, and he was a tremendous, tremendous scholar, but completely dedicated to the Rebbe. And whatever the Rebbe wanted, whatever he was able to focus on the Rebbe completely. And when he stood in front of the Rebbe, he stood like nothing. The fact that he was a tremendous Torah scholar, that he was the head of a yeshiva, that he had hundreds, if not thousands of students and so on, was nothing. He stood there, and his hand would shake when he poured the Rebbe's wine, because he was standing in front of the Rebbe, who he was older than. Anyway, he gets up, and he was could get very emotional. When he got emotional, he would turn red. I mean, he really got very emotional. And he gets up, and he's about to speak, but before he speaks, you could see already the emotions are just welling up within him, and he's turning red, and we're getting nervous, like, what is this all about? And finally, he begins to speak, and he says like this: we, the members of the heads of the yeshiva, just tested and examined each of the classes. He said, it's obvious from the way you responded that you guys are sitting and studying properly. He said, you're really learning, which is what you're supposed to do. And it's very impressive. He said that every question we asked, you were able to answer. He was blown away. So he said, I just want you to know that we're going back to New York now, and this is what's going to happen. When we arrive back in New York, we're going to go into the Rebbe and give a report about what we found in Marstan. And you have no idea, this is what he told me, he said, you have no idea how much pleasure the Rebbe will have when he hears that the Bacham are sitting and learning the way they're supposed to. That will be the Rebbe's greatest nachas, is that you're sitting and learning the way you're supposed to. Okay. End of speech, and he walks out. We were, wow! Like our hearts were exploding with excitement. This was beautiful. What more could we possibly want than to give the Rebbe a little satisfaction, a little happiness? And here we were told that the heads of the yeshiva themselves are going to come and tell the Rebbe that kind of report. We just about managed to control ourselves till that night, and that night there was a Farbrengen. And it was a very serious Farbrengen. We couldn't do this officially, in the study hall. We had to find some place, and we were told that there's a tunnel, and at the end of the tunnel, anyway, we ended up in some apartment under some other building that later became the Cheder or something. Anyway, I think the Anholi used to live in that building, and they didn't sleep that night. Anyway, we had a Farbrengen, we went to this apartment, and we started, whatever, 11 o'clock, 11:30, we started Farbrengen, and Mashka.
You have to say, who's the we? Who Farbrengen?
Our class.
Oh, okay. The class that made the Rebbe so happy.
One of the classes. Anyway, we were, as a group, so we were very excited and so on. Anyway, this went on for a while. I'll digress here for a moment. It's about maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and our alcohol level and our blood level was about the same at that point. Later it changed. Okay, and suddenly we hear crying. What? Crying? We're looking around, what's going on? who's crying? Now, little kids that are 4 and 5 years old, they cry. Old men also cry. But students that are 19 years old, 18, 19 years old, they don't cry. It got silent, and we're looking around, who's crying? And it was a student from Israel. Very, very serious guy. He studied, he learned, Niglach Siddur, he was exceptional. And he had his head down and he was crying, and we're starting to think, this guy left Israel when he was 14 years old. He had not been home yet, even once, because he couldn't leave the Rebbe's presence. Who knows, maybe something happened. So we start to ask him, Chanech, what happened? In Yiddish, we're talking to him, like, what happened? No answer, he's still crying. So this is very serious. So we start to really, finally he picks his head up, and he opens his mouth, and he breaks out crying. Now, as nervous as we were, there's something very serious going on over here. We're not continuing the Farbrengen until we know what's going on. Chanech is one of our guys, one of the boys. Come on, what's going on? Anyway, we ask him again, and finally he picked up his head, and he opens his mouth, and these are the words that come out. I'll translate them. He said, God should give us the gift that we should become the Rebbe Shluchim. And he broke out crying. And now he wasn't alone. Now the whole place. This was our only wish, that we should go on Shlichus. Anyway, we Farbrengen the rest of the night. By the time we left, it was already light outside. And the alcohol level was not what it was been previously. Anyway, we go, we were just told that it would be the report to the Rebbe that we're studying. So we went straight to the study hall, and it's about maybe an hour or so before the official class is supposed to begin. Now, if we go to bed, there's no way we're going to make it, okay? So have you ever seen beached whales? Okay. If you came into the study hall, there's a bunch of guys, okay, that are just beached, okay? And standing, okay, one guy was on the Melech table, and the rest of us, laying around. Anyway, Melech came in, and he kicked the guy under the table. He woke us up. Anyway, he woke us up, and we sat by the table. I don't know if we studied, we didn't study. We were there. We were present. Okay? Hey. After studying, so now it's time to daven. Okay, so we weren't the only guys, the only class in Yeshiva Farbrengen that night. Obviously, everybody else had Farbrengen also. I think there was an official Farbrengen, so class was starting late that morning. Anyway, we decided we can't go to sleep until we daven, because who knows when we're going to get up. So we started to look around, and we found that there were exactly 10 guys. We had a minyan mitzumtzum and exactly 10 guys. So we davened with a minyan, and we went to sleep, and I don't know when we got up. But anyway, we davened, and we went to sleep. That's part A.
When did you go to the mikveh? I want to know.
It was Morristown. I threw him in the mikveh. No? So on the way. So the next, about 4 or 5 weeks later, it's about 2:15 in the afternoon, a little later, 2:30, 2:40, exact same time as it had been previously. And again, there's a guy running through the halls of the yeshiva, and he's got a little piece of paper in his hand, and he looks at a guy and he says, Rabbi Herson wants you in his office. Now, Rabbi Herson was the head of the yeshiva, and we had been in Morristown for 3 years. Not once did Mrs. Kornfeld ever let us get to Rabbi Herson's office. We had never been there, okay? He's just the head of the yeshiva, whatever. Anyway, but he looks at the guy and says, no, Rabbi Herson wants you in the office. Anyway, he's running around, and what is it? What? He says, I don't know. Rabbi Herson gave me a list of names. He told me that I should make sure that these guys come to the office, and when we're all there, we should knock on the door. And we're gathering one by one, and everybody keeps asking each other, what is this all about? What is this all about? And I'll be honest with you, we were thinking maybe shlichus, but the disappointment that if it was not shlichus would have been so painful that not one of us could say it out of our mouth. We're all looking at, what do you think? I don't know. What's going on? Anyway, finally all 10 are there, and the guy comes back, and he knocks on Rabbi Herson's door. Rabbi Herson opens up the door, and he said, Rabbi Klein, the Rebbe's secretary, would like to speak to you. Those are the words we had been waiting our whole life to hear. Anyway, he said, But he said he told me he's going to leave the special hotline, the yellow phone. He's going to leave it available, but I keep calling and it's busy. But I wait another few minutes, and as soon as I get through, I'll call you in because he wants to speak to each one of you because you're going to go on shlichus. And he said, I'll be out in a couple minutes. He closed the door. We made a shachiyanu with Hashem's name. This was truly good news. Okay, it says in Shulchan Aruch that, right? If you have something that literally touches you, it's very important to you. You should say you feel excited about it. You should say a shachiyanu. So we said a shachiyanu with Hashem's name, and so on. We didn't know where, we didn't know what, we didn't know when. We just knew that shlichus. That's all that was important to us. Anyway, the main part of the story is like this. We took a look around. These 10 guys that were on that list were the exact same 10 guys that Farbrengen the whole night till the morning. It was the same minyan, one for one, that had davened by that minyan that morning. So we're sitting by Farbrengen. Whatever you need, now's your chance. Okay, today's a big day. It's an important day, and we're sitting by Farbrengen. We'll say l'chaim, and God should give us success. L'chaim. The Rebbe's father-in-law took one short medrash, a couple of lines, and he spoke 20 chapters on it. The Rebbe took each of those 20 chapters, and each year would expand on one of those chapters and create an entire Maimer just of that chapter itself. And after 20 years, a full volume, a massive amount of ideas, the Rebbe taught based on the ideas that his father-in-law taught. And when he finished, he started over again. It's incredible how with one word, one idea, when a Rebbe says it, in general, when a Jew studies Torah, Torah is in itself infinite. But here you could see it in the most obvious way, that the Rebbe takes one idea and he expounds on it and he expounds on it, and we can spend our entire lifetime learning just that one idea. So I want to share with you a story about an individual that I met in Oklahoma when we first came, not too long after we had come, and how the Rebbe, with one phrase, changed everything. I can give you several examples. Let's start with this one. I have a friend in Tulsa. His name is Andy. Gavriel. Rabbi Shalom, you know Andy? Probably met him. Anyway, I had been there for a while. I'd never met him yet. The phone rings one day, and hi, how are you? Ta-da-da. He said, I want to meet with you. I have an issue, and I'd like to meet with you. Okay. I didn't know who he was. I was a little afraid. So I said, okay, let's meet in the park. Afraid to bring him to my house. Anyway, we met in the park. Anyway, he sits down.
Are you allowed to have concealed guns over there?
Can have any kind of guns you want.
Doesn't have to be concealed, right?
You can have 6 shooters in the back of your head.
So what's there to worry about?
So, anyway, I meet. He probably knows more about guns than I do. So in Morristown, I missed that class. Anyway, so anyway, we meet in the park, and this is his opening line. Hi, how are you? He leans forward, and body language is like part of it. Okay, I've learned over the years body language can be very important. Anyway, he says, "I hate Jews." He said, and the speech he gave me then would have been worthy of the finest anti-Semitism. He trashed Jews, and I was flabbergasted. How could you talk like that? And he explained to me, and he went on and on. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but I'm just giving you an idea. Okay, this is the kind of guy he is. You talk about, a loose cannon. Okay, that was his opening salvo. I hate Jews. That proved to me that I should care about them. Anyway. So,
Jewish, right?
huh? Oh, very Jewish. Yeah.
Only a Jew can speak like that.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, the story goes like this. Okay, Andy is part of a very select group of people that exist today in the world. Okay, Jews that were born in Poland 70 years ago, I don't know if there's 50 of them or 300 of them, but there's a very, very select number. Okay? He was born just before the war in Poland. Okay? And Jewish kids were all slaughtered. Okay? So he's part of this very select group, so he carries a big burden on him. Okay? But it gets much more complicated than that. As I found out, stories like this. His father was killed in the war, his mother, a Jewish woman, and she actually was blonde, and blonde hair, blue-eyed. She was able to pass herself off as a Polish woman, not Jewish. And that's how she survived the war. Okay. So she told, and she became a practicing Catholic, like all good Poles, and whatever. She forgot this. She buried this whole Jewish business. So Andy tells me that when he was maybe 10 or 11, the kids in his class in school were making fun of him. You know, Žid, you know, they were making fun of him because he had dark hair. So he came home and he asked his mother, "What's a Žid?" And she freaked out. She said, "It's nothing. Who said that?" He understood from the way she reacted. Something's going on over here. He said, "What's the story?" So she felt like she had already let the cat out of the bag. So she said, "Listen here. You want to live, just be like everybody else. You want to die, be a Jew. If you're going to be a Jew, they'll kill you. Because that's what happens. Jews get killed. You want to live, just be a Pole like everybody else. I managed to keep it quiet. Just tell them you're Polish, that's all." But now he knows that he's a Jew. Okay, and he has a neshama. The neshama was tickled. So he kept going back and forth. On one hand, he'd like to hide the fact because his mother told him that it's dangerous to be a Jew, and you can get killed for that. And the proof is there are no Jews left around because they were all killed, and there used to be millions of them over here. So what's called? See, his whole life he was tortured by this idea. On one hand, he's a Jew. On the other hand, his experiences with Jews, because at 19, he got out of Poland, okay, and he was able to go to Israel. And his experiences over there were very, very negative. Very negative. So he came to the States, he was able to come to the States. Okay. So on one hand, he knows he's a Jew, and he can't deny the fact, and that's who he is, and the fact that he got to Israel, and he hated Poland. You ever need a speaker to speak about against communism? This guy can do it pretty well. Anyway, but I mean, Russian, Soviet, communism. Anyway, so he made it to Israel. He made it eventually to the United States because he's a Jew. So actually, it saved his life. On the other hand, his mother keeps telling him that this is crazy, and his experiences with Jews, and again, he has stories and stories not pleasant. Anyway, we became friends, and he started to put on tefillin once in a while, and he would come to davening, and he came to other events, whatever. We started to study together. Things were moving pretty well. About maybe 2 years later, I was going to the Rebbe for a Shabbos. And I figured this is a good chance for Andy, you should come to see the Rebbe. Okay? You should come to Kar Heights for Shabbos, see the Rebbe. So, I asked him, I offered him the opportunity. He said, "Yeah, sounds like a great idea." Whatever. I said, "Okay, I'm going in this day." Whatever. We made up. We bought tickets, and we got. I came to 770, so I had not been away that long. I still knew the guys that were studying in yeshiva and so on, and whatever. They wanted to hear war stories, guys who went on shlichus and so on. So and when I came to 770, we got there. It was about 9:45 at night. It was just after Ma'ariv. Okay. So I got into a conversation with a bunch of guys that I knew, a little younger than me perhaps, but shoving the bull, as we used to call it, and I was just having a conversation, and I completely forgot about him. I'm so absorbed in this conversation with my friends that I completely forgot that he was there. And about 15, 20 minutes later, I suddenly, "1 second, I'm not here alone. Andy's here." I turn around, I'm looking for him, and he's standing in the shul in 770 on the side, and he's got a smile on his face from ear to ear. He's just... So I walk over to him and I said, "Andy, what's going on? What's on your mind?" He said, "This is the first time I see Torah Jews that are not Holocaust victims. These guys are happy." They're real. They are sincerely happy with life. I've never seen this before. This is beautiful. He was just blown away. He saw the yeshiva students and we were animated in conversation. He said there's not a trace of Holocaust in them. Every Jew that I met in Israel was a Holocaust survivor, in one sense or another. He said there's not a trace of them. He was fascinated. Okay. The next day we did other things. Friday night he came to the shul, and the Rebbe came to the shul. The Rebbe said the Shabbos to him. He's very excited. Okay, things are going really well. Now, if you know, the Rebbe would come down at 1:30. The Rebbe would start to speak. The Rebbe would have Farbrengen, Shabbos afternoon would start at 1:30. I had a good place because that's the system in 770. That if you have a place, you come back. If you go on shlichus, you come back. 10 years later, 20 years later, that's your place. You may have to have 4 other guys standing on your feet, but you can get in. You have a right to stand over there. Anyway, so I go to my place, and it was a very good place. Why? Because it was at the end of a bench. I didn't want to sit in the Rebbe's presence, but it was at the end of the bench, so Andy could come. He could sit right in front of me. I could stand. It's great. So I tell him, Andy, Farbrengen started at 1:30. Trying to give him a little heads up. He said, I'm not coming. What do you mean? He said, I can't do that. I said, why? He said, I've seen the pictures of Farbrengen. The people are standing all around, and the Rebbe's sitting up in front over there, and everybody's the crowd. He said, if I go in the middle of that, he said, the Jews are going to smother me. It's just too much. Philosophically, he said, I won't be able to get out. I'll be stuck over there. The Jews are just going to, they'll suffocate me. I said, Andy, if you want to get in the middle of Farbrengen, it's very difficult. Getting out, no problem. Just start walking out. Everybody get out of your way. That's all. The guy's leaving. You'll be able to leave whenever. He said, you sure? I said, I promise you'll be able to leave whenever you're ready. Okay? Come for the first talk. The Rebbe will speak for a while. Then you'll say l'chaim to the Rebbe. And then you could leave. Okay? We came to Farbrengen. The Rebbe spoke for 35 minutes. It was a pretty long sikha. And afterwards, singing a niggin. And it's getting all exciting, and everybody's saying l'chaim, and and Andy gets up, and he holds up his cup to the Rebbe. The Rebbe looks straight at him. The Rebbe says l'chaim. Great. Andy, if you want to leave, now's a good time. No, I'm not going anywhere. This is great. He's staying here. Okay. So the Rebbe starts the second sikha, and the sikha is going on for a while, so getting about another half hour, 40 minutes. And in the middle of the sikha, the guy has a panic attack. He said, shh, just go. He said, there's a wall of people. I said, just walk. Sure enough, they just moved out of the way, and he got out. Okay, anyway, I stayed till the time. And the Farbrengen, Mincha. After Farbrengen, my parents' house is very close to 770. So I walked up Kingston Avenue, 2 blocks, whatever, the corner of President Kingston, if you know the neighborhood. And I go into my parents' house, and I asked my mother, where's Andy? I don't know. He was showed up here before, but he left. I don't know where he is. Oh my goodness, the guy's lost. I wasn't going to find him. Anyway, I went back to 770, and the whole 770 had just poured onto the street, and the place is packed. Okay, and I'm looking for Andy for this needle, in the middle of a haystack. The only thing was he was not wearing a black hat, so that helped a little, and he didn't have glasses. So, so anyway, I'm looking, and sure enough. There's a train station right across from 770, and he's standing there, and he's standing by the train station on top, by the fence over there, and he's surveying the scene, and he's got that same big smile across his face over there, and he's like, in Oklahoma they say a pig in mud. No, I mean, he's enjoying himself. Anyway. How could you say such a thing? Anyway. So anyway, I walk over to him. I say, Andy, what's going on? He said, look at this. He said, there's young families, ladies with little kids. It's so beautiful families. There's not one trace of Holocaust in them. He just can't get over this. He said, these are happy Jews. They're Jewishly Jewish. It's the real deal. And they're absolutely happy. He was very excited. This was like a new world for him. Okay? So this is all the preparation. And you could see that it had a deep effect on him. He saw something that he had never seen before. And this was very important to him because his whole life he had been struggling. Yeah, Jewish, not Jewish, yes, Jewish, not Jewish. And suddenly he sees what it means to be a Jew in their natural habitat. This is, these are Jews. So he's very excited about it. The next morning, the Rebbe is giving out dollars. Okay, so we get online. Now, if you're familiar, the line would take, 2 to 3 hours, whatever, and we're standing online. And Andy turns to me, he says, I would like to ask the Rebbe something. And I'm thinking, this is a loose cannon if there ever was one. Who knows what he's going to say to the Rebbe? He's going to tell the Rebbe he's Jews. I don't know what's going to happen over here. So I'm a little nervous. Anyway, I told him like this. I said, can you distill it down to one sentence? Because if you're speaking to the Rebbe, you have to be able to say it really quick, a few words, right? One sentence. I said, could you distill down to one sentence? He said, I'll think about it. Okay. I have a little reprieve now, okay? And I'm thinking, should I stop him? Should I not stop him? Should I let him? He's asking on the other hand. I'm thinking, the Rebbe doesn't belong to me. The Rebbe belongs to him as much as he belongs to me. Who am I to get in the way over here? He wants to speak to the Rebbe. If he could distill it down to one sentence, he should be able to ask the Rebbe. See, he tells me, sure enough, a little while later, the words I was cringing to hear, and he says, I got it. I can ask my question or make a statement, whatever. He didn't even say what's called. I can do it in one sentence. Okay? I said, we'll come to the Rebbe. I'll introduce you. That's called. The Rebbe will give us dollars. What's called, and I'll introduce you. We come to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave me $1. I believe the Rebbe gave me a $2. Anyway, I told the Rebbe, this is Gabriel Paley from Tulsa, and he came to spend Shabbos by the Rebbe. That's the way I put it. He came to spend Shabbos by the Rebbe. The Rebbe gave him $1, and he leans forward in the most gentle way. It's hard to even describe. It's Edelkeit, it's totally not him. He leans forward and he tells the Rebbe, bless me, I should be comfortable with my Judaism. Oh. And I'm thinking, wow, this is unbelievable. Okay, he got, because this is a man that for 50 years is in torture. He's very, very uncomfortable. He finally reached that plateau. He's finally comfortable being a Jew. He loves it, and that's what he asked the Rebbe. He said, Rebbe, bless me, I should be comfortable with my Judaism. I had no idea what was about to happen next. The Rebbe looked at him with just a very faint smile. The Rebbe said to him, like, comfortable? They didn't say the word comfortable. The Rebbe looked at him, comfortable? The Rebbe said, you should go from strength to strength. You should go from level to level. You should go from strength to strength. What happened over here? With one word, the Rebbe took a guy that for 50 years was struggling. He finally reached a point where he was comfortable, and he was ready to stay there. And the Rebbe turned him around and showed him there's a big world out there. You know what it means to be a Jew? You're comfortable being never be comfortable. You should always grow. You should go from strength to strength. Whatever you're doing now, do more tomorrow. Whatever you do tomorrow, do more the next day. There's so much more. If the Rebbe had told him that a day earlier, it wouldn't have meant a thing. The moment he reached that thing, with one phrase, the Rebbe opened the whole world to him. The Rebbe told me he should go from strength to strength. We walked outside. He looked at me, he said, I need to buy a pair of tefillin. We went across the street, okay, and we bought a pair of tefillin. Okay. It's not the end of the story, it gets even better. We're on the plane on the way back, and it's just a couple hours later, and he's got this glow on his face, and he's very comfortable being a Jew. So, I didn't say anything. I was just I'm going to let him, lead this conversation. He leans over to me and he said, his wife Sharon. He said, Sharon and I eloped. We never had a Jewish wedding. He said, I have two teenage boys. He said, I think it would be the right thing for us and a very good thing for my kids if they would see if we would have a Jewish wedding. Can you marry us Jewishly? Sure. We had the most beautiful wedding in Chabad house. It was like the room downstairs, and everybody came and they danced, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely, we had a chuppah, the whole 9 yards. It was absolutely beautiful. And the lesson to his kids was very, very important. Okay, he had two teenage sons. They weren't getting married to make their mother-in-law happy. It wasn't getting married because of social reasons. They were doing it purely for the best of intentions. Okay, just to give you an idea where this went, because the Rebbe told them from strength to strength. One of those boys today is Chabadnik who lives in Southern California. He's got 9 kids and gives a class in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in Chabad house. What's his name? Shmuli. Chaim. I'm honored to be in your presence. Shlich of the Rebbe. Chaim. You can say Chaim on soda. There's no soda here. You can say on water. Who remembers when the Rebbe said you can say Chaim on soda? You remember? Okay.
I know by release time, and then
That was one time?
That was Sukkot.
I was Sukkot?
Yeah.
And another time was Simchas Torah. When the Rebbe sent the Sefer Torah out to
the ladies.
Tavshin Mem. Right, so what's called. Since Hashem started. So the Rebbe said the girls should come to the window. Okay. L'chaim, l'chaim. In Chabad, there's an old phrase. Before I start to speak, I want to say a few words. So before I tell you the story that I want to tell you a story about, I'll tell you a different story. Okay. We're talking about this idea that when the Rebbe says a word, even one word, it's transformative. If you're sensitive to it, if you listen to it, if you implement it, every word of the Rebbe is infinite. I'll give you an example. There's a famous Chabad story. It's printed in Hayom Yom, it's printed in other places. The story, the way it's told, is that the Alter Rebbe would read from the Torah every Shabbos. As it turned out, he had to travel, so he wasn't there. He wasn't present Shabbos. So somebody else had to read from the Torah. As it turns out, that Shabbos was the part of the Torah which includes all kinds of horrible, horrible stuff, right? It says in the Torah that if you will follow the mitzvahs, you'll have blessings and blessings, showers, blessings, right? Like an old Russian lady. No, I mean, like, okay. But then it curses like an old Polish lady. I mean, it's horrible stuff. Okay. Anyway, I don't know what I just said, huh? Okay. I'm gonna try. It's blame the Chaim, whatever. Okay. Anyway.
Hillbillies from Oklahoma.
yeah. I didn't know what I was talking about. I don't know anything about Russians. I don't know anything about the Polish. Anyway, old ladies, nothing. Anyway, so in any case, right? It's horrible stuff. So the Mittler Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe's son, heard the Torah reading. That's the way the story is told, right? He heard the Torah reading, and he was so deeply affected by the horrible curses that he heard, that he got very ill. I mean, so ill that many weeks later, was in Kippur. They weren't sure whether he would be able to fast. He was quite ill. Okay. So when he recovered, they asked him, "You hear this Torah portion read every year? Like, what happened?" Every year, it's the same Torah. We read it word for word. We read it last year, the year before. So the way the story is recorded is like this. As the Tata learned, when my father reads, I don't hear any curses. When the Rebbe reads it, it sounds completely different. I hear it, but it doesn't sound anything like this. Now somebody else read it, it was horrible. Okay, so this is a story, again, we all grew up with, and it's printed, and we heard it many times. One time, the Rebbe told this story while doing Farbrengen. I happened to be there, and the Rebbe said the story with one word differently. And when the Rebbe said the story with that one word, I thought my head was going to explode. I was just going crazy. What did the Rebbe say? The Rebbe said in Yiddish, I'll translate it. The Rebbe said, "As atata leint, het sich nicht geklavet." As atata leint, het sich nicht geklavet. The difference is like this. The way the story initially was is as der tata leint. When my father reads, when the Alter Rebbe reads, I don't hear any curses. The way the Rebbe said the story was, when a father reads, the child doesn't hear any curses. That's a whole different program. That's the definition of how we have to speak to our children. That we could say what seems to be the most horrible things. It's real discipline. But it's said with such love that the child doesn't hear anything but love. when the Rebbe changed that word, till then I thought it was a story about the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe. When the Rebbe said that word, that line, as atata leit, when a parent reads, the child doesn't hear it. That's very demanding of us. Each of us has to live up to that. That's a tremendous demand on us. This is the way we have to speak to our children. If you're a teacher, if you're a friend, that's how you have to speak. It doesn't make a difference what it is that you need to say. You need to say it in such a way that all they hear is love. And that doesn't happen by itself. It takes a tremendous amount of effort. Anyway, that was the story I was going to tell before the story. The story I was going to tell, it's also an Oklahoma story. Okay. There was a Jew who lived in Oklahoma, very, very wealthy. He was actually nationally famous. He was on the board of every, national board, whatever. Very, very wealthy guy. And I figured that this is a perfect shidduch for me because he has a lot of money and I need a lot of money. I mean, what could be better? Okay. But the question was, how do I get to him? Okay. So, I heard from another shliach that when you have such a case, one possibility is like this: call him up on a Friday, ask to speak to him, and whether he answers the phone or not, leave him a message, and if you speak to him, tell him directly. If not, leave a message for him that the rabbi called to wish good Shabbos. And just keep doing that. So I called the first week. I asked to speak to him. Who's calling? Rabbi Weg. Hold on a minute. He's not available right now. Just tell him that Rabbi Weg, the rabbi called to wish him good Shabbos. The next Friday, same thing. I called, asked to speak to him. He's not available. Tell him the rabbi called to wish him good Shabbos. This one, 1 week, another week, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Finally, I called 1 week, and suddenly the secretary said, don't hang up. Anyway, she buzzes through. He picks up the phone. He said, what do you want? So I told him, your money. I mean, I try to be honest, you know what I mean? If I was calling him about mezuzahs, I would have told him mezuzahs. I was calling him about tefillin, I would have told him mezuzah tefillin. But I wanted his money. So I told him, I said very clearly, I'd like to earn your support, your financial support. I said, but in all fairness, I said, I don't expect you to give it to me just like this, just because I asked for it. I said, what I really would like right now, give me 20 minutes, let me give you my pitch, and tell you what we're doing, and if you're ready to support us after that, that'll be great, and if not, I won't bother you again. If you'll give me 20 minutes, that's a deal. I just want 20 minutes of your time to do this, which is a big deal for him, 20 minutes. He doesn't just do that. He said, that'll do. Fair? I asked him for 20 minutes, 20 minutes. Anyway, I went, I gave him my pitch. Finished the pitch, the guy tells me like this. He said, and this is a guy who knows the Jewish world very well. Okay. He says to me, listen here. He said, look at my office. His office was about the size of this room. Okay, and the couches in there, and shelves, and awards, and shofar. He had a whole section of shofars, a whole section of plaques, a whole section of menorahs, whatever, from every Jewish institution in the world. So he said, you see over there? He said, that's money from the Atlanta Scholars Kollel. He said, I give them money also. He said, I'm reformed not by default. I'm reformed because I believe it's the right thing. I really believe strongly. He said, I wish every Jew was a Reformed Jew. And he says, the Jewish people need people. We need scholars. We need people who know things, whatever. And that the Orthodox do pretty well. So he said, I support them also. So he said, Yeshiva Torah's Chaim in Denver. I remember literally, he pointed to all the awards. He said, I give all of the money. He said, the only one you won't find over here is Chabad. He said, I will not give Chabad money. Now we're special. So I asked him, and why not? He said, for two reasons. He said, number one, he said, I know your Rebbe. He said, and he will forever carry the flag of separatism. He will always say that Torah, Judaism, is different than other Jewish people. And he has no price. He's a real believer. He said, for the rest of them, for the right amount, I can buy them all. He said, but the Rebbe, never. he said, so I have no chance. Okay. Number two, he said, all these other places, they're no threat to me. He said, you're here. My children could become frum. my children are under threat. He said, you could make Torah Jews out of them. And I'm thinking, this is the first guy who ever gave me really a good reason to not give him money, because he's 100% right. He's perfectly correct on both counts. So I said, Mr. Frank, you are a man of principle. I try to be a man of principle. You should not be giving me money, because everything you said is completely. This guy gets it. Nobody gets it. This guy gets it. I said, you're completely right. I said, the Rebbe will never change, and your children are under threat. So I really appreciate that you gave me the 20 minutes of time, and the other guys tell me this year is a slow year, it's full of baloney, come on. They didn't miss their vacation, they certainly didn't miss breakfast, you know what I mean? They don't want to give. He said, you gave me real reasons, because everything you said, I'm guilty as charged, 100% correct. No problem. So I stood up, and I shook his hand, and whatever, and he liked that, you know. I said, I won't be bothering you again. It was cool because, you know, that's the deal, and whatever. And I started to walk out. He stopped me on the way out, and he said, I just want to say one thing before you leave. He said, I respect the system that created you. He said, for you to walk around this city looking like you do and doing what you do, he said, they're doing something right. They really know what they're doing. He said, the system that created you is very, very on target. It was worth coming just for that. Anyway, nothing we parted on the terms, whatever, we left. Okay. Epilogue, number 1. About a year and a half later, I went to some, you know, I'm very selective about the events, the Jewish events that I go to in town, whatever. But this is one that I could go to, it was Israeli bonds or something, whatever. Anyway, it was in a building downtown, skyscraper in Tulsa, it's 21 stories high. And at the top, there's a club over there called the Summit Club. Anyway, so I went to the Summit Club, and I'm going down, I'm about to leave, and I'm standing, waiting for the elevator. Who's standing next to me? My friend, Frank. And we get into the elevator. You ever heard the expression, you know, elevator speech? Anyway.
Elevator pitch.
Elevator pitch. Elevator pitch. So anyway, we're going down, and he turns to me. He said, Rabbi, I've been watching you very closely for the last year and a half. It's time to come pick up a check. Okay. So he came. He picked up a check. That's epilogue number 1.
Why?
Huh?
Why not?
He realized this is something worth supporting. This will be around. Okay. Epilogue number 2.
Can we ask how much it was?
Epilogue number 2. We have the Yeshivas Kayetz. We had this year. We actually had it a summer yeshiva, which is basically a day, and we invite the entire community to come and study with yeshiva students and so on. And women are invited also. They don't study with the yeshiva students, but the rabbi has one table with all the ladies and whatever. Anyway, so I was sitting in the office. We had sent out the publicity about it, and we get a call. A woman calls. She said, "I'd like to make 2 reservations for a taste of yeshiva." Yes, sure. My pleasure. What's your name? It's Frank's daughter. She was under threat. She came to the Taste of Yeshiva. She was our number 1 financial supporter for over 10 years.
Wow.
And still gives us that much money. Others have exceeded her, but she's the number 1 financial supporter for over 10 years. His money, by the way. Okay, that's epilogue. Okay. Anyway, so don't give up. Anyway, I once shared the story with somebody. He said the most important part of the most important part of the story was at the beginning. He said that you kept calling the guy to wish him good Shabbos, and you didn't give up until he answered the phone. He picked up, "What do you want?" He said, "That you have to." And you stick with it, and eventually you'll get there. Anyway,
There was something for everyone to learn.
Yeah. every city has its claims to fame. We don't have a Golden Gate Bridge. We do not have a bay. We don't have palm trees. But
you also don't have Polk Street.
this is true. I don't know what Polk Street is, but we don't have any.
You don't want to know.
Okay, good. I'll just leave it at that.
Castro.
So what we do have, which has become an interesting and unexpected part of our shlichus over the last 5-6 years, Tulsa has the top eating disorder hospital in the United States. It's a very unfunny joke. It's a very serious illness, unfortunately, and it's very difficult to break. I have a cousin from Crown Heights who is no longer with us, a young girl who lives on Abraham Avenue, as we say, Crown Heights. I'm saying this is anyway. Unfortunately, and in the not just Orthodox, but the serious or the Haredische world of serious Orthodoxy, Yeshivish world and Chassidish world and so on, this has become a very serious issue. And there are many such young ladies that are suffering from this, and it's very, very difficult to break. So the success rate overall, I'm not sure what it is, but it's whatever, at a certain point, but this hospital in Tulsa has a higher than anywhere else has the highest success. It's also far from 100%. It's maybe 60 or 70% success rate. Probably about at least a quarter, maybe even a third of the girls have to come back a second time. It's a very serious issue. Anyway, but suddenly we got thrown into this position because there are now yeshivish and chassidish families that are coming to Tulsa on a regular basis. This past Shabbos we had 3 families. It's whatever. It's a real issue. But in the course of time, it's also given me opportunity to interact with interesting Jews of every stripe imaginable, every kind of kippah and hat and streimel and spadik and you name it. They've all been there. So this story happened with a family that, let me put it this way, he was raised a Belzer. Belz is, Hasidic group, Hungarian, Romanian, Polish group, I don't know exactly where, Polish group, probably Galicia, so southern Poland. Shtetler Belz, but he's not sure whether he's a Belzer anymore. And you'll understand in a few minutes why that's the case. Anyway, so again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but there's, we've gotten deeply involved, and we have to understand, where they're coming from, and the profile of these young ladies. They're the smartest people you ever met. They're always the top 1 or 2% in their class. It's actually one way of defining this illness is that it's perfectionism gone too far. There's something snaps, but it's basically these are perfectionists who have gotten into a certain mode, and it's become very, very serious, and they can't eat. It's a real problem. Well, and what happens? Everyone knows the story about. I'm sure the rabbi told it many times. About the guy who wanted to save some money, feeding his horse. So every day he started to feed it a little less, right? So finally he stopped feeding it altogether, and what happens if you don't feed a person for months on end? It affects their liver, their heart, their whole systems start to shut down. Their brain, it's a very serious problem. Okay, so their lives are in danger. So anyway, but there's a difference in the rules of the hospital whether they're an adolescent or whether they're an adult. An adolescent is up to 18. On the day they turn 18, everything changes. All the rules change. Anyway, so the average stay is 4 to 6 months. Many have already stayed for 8 months. Some less, but the average stay is 4 to 6 months. Okay. Anyway, there was a girl. She came, and the parents came to visit her a few times. We became very good friends with the father. Used to, Farbrengen and talk and learn together. It was very nice. Anyway, as it turned out, so she reached a certain point where she was what they call partial. Partial means to say that she can, it's like a halfway house. She goes there during the day, she stays in the hospital to participate in the program, but at night she goes home to sleep, with her parents. If they're adolescents, if they're under 18 years old, so that because of the insurance requirements and so on, they're not allowed to let them onto that program unless one parent at least, has to stay there full time. Which means to say, you have families with 9, 10, 11 kids, and one of the parents has to stay there for the whole time, and it goes on for at least a month. Okay, so usually what happens is, right, the mother might come for 2 weeks, and then the father will come for 2 weeks. It's a whole big issue. Anyway, as it turned out, there was a girl like that, and we'd spent, the mother was there for 2 weeks, and the father was there for 2 weeks. Anyway, and they realized like this: it was getting close to Pesach. Past year, Pesach, and one of the real dangerous times for these girls to go home is actually holidays, because everybody comes, the whole family's there, the brothers, the sisters, the nieces, the nephews, and eating is non-stop, and they can't really handle it, and they withdraw. It could cause a relapse. It's all about triggers, whatever. Anyway, so the parents realized that if this girl comes home for Pesach, it's really, really dangerous. So they begged the hospital, keep her. She was supposed to be released right before Pesach. So if you can keep her just 2 more weeks, just after Pesach, no problem. Could you do that? They said, we would love to, but these programs cost approximately $38,000 a month. Who can afford that? Okay. And again, these are large families, they don't have extra money, they're married off kids and so they have to marry off others.
They give kosher food there?
It's a separate issue. I wouldn't recommend for somebody to eat it, but for these girls, it's very kosher. It's the most kosher program in the United States. The food that they cook is all kosher. In separate pots, it's double wrapped. They have a separate kosher oven. It's a whole, there's a lot that goes on, and the girls feel at least that they're eating kosher, which again, it's psychologically, it's a big issue for them, and so on. Whether I would recommend for somebody else to eat there, no, it's not Bishul Yisrael, whatever. There's different issues that come up. Anyway, so but they wanted this girl to stay just till after Pesach. Okay. So he spoke to the hospital. The hospital said that if we can get the insurance to cover, we'll be glad to. We'll recommend to the hospital, to the insurance, that that they should extend it for 2 more weeks, and probably they'll do it. They got involved. They thought, the insurance thought about it, came back, no, we can't do it. And the parents can't afford it. It'll be $15,000. They just can't do it. They don't have that money. So they tried. The bottom line is the insurance denied them 3 times. They tried every trick in the book. They could not do it. There's a special guy in Muncie. He's an expert at getting the insurances to agree to all kinds of things. They hire him for $75 an hour, and he works at it. It didn't work. Anyway, so anyway, he came back. He was there. He came basically to pick up his daughters. It was like the last night before they will leave. They're supposed to the next morning. So he told me that in the morning he has to go pick her up. They're going to give him instructions for like 2 hours, whatever. Then he's going to come pick up their stuff from us, because they had been staying by us for the entire month. First his wife, then him, and the girl was there the whole month. Whatever. They're going to come back to Chabad, and they're going to pick up their stuff and go to the airport. Okay. They tried everything. Anyway, we're having this conversation, and he tells me that's the plan. The way our Chabad house is laid out, so there's the shul, and there's the kitchen on one side, the bedrooms on the other side. So the shul is between the kitchen and the bedrooms. And we were standing in the kitchen, this is pretty late at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and we were just telling stories. A story, I didn't remember why I told him the story, but it's a story that I know what happened with, so I told him this story. I shared with him the story. You have to understand the difference between how Chabad deals with the Rebbe versus how other Chassidim deal with the Rebbe. There's a famous line about that when other Chassidim want to go to the Rebbe, the wife is very happy. She packs him a lunch. She makes sure that he'll go. Why? Because he's going to come home. He's going to have all kinds of blessings. Go to the Rebbe, he'll get brachas. Comes home with brachas. It's worth sending him. Chabad Chassidim, he has to sneak out of the house. Why? because he gets lost over there. He goes and he stays by the Rebbe for a while. He prepares in advance, and he's like sort of out of this world. He's davening and he's learning, and he's not involved in what's going on, and so on. And when he gets to the Rebbe, so he comes home. They ask, did you learn anything? He's thinking that's called learning. Chabad. It's not up to the way it should be. So no, I didn't learn it. Did you daven like a man? Well, daven. So, did you get a bracha? I was embarrassed to ask the Rebbe. So he comes up with nothing. Okay. But more specifically, based on our generation, when we have the opportunity to do something for the Rebbe, that's our greatest nachas. That's the greatest opportunity to do something that the Rebbe wants, something that the Rebbe would like. We want to do that. The idea of taking from the Rebbe, we're not comfortable with that. Other Chassidim are very happy taking from the Rebbe. The Rebbe gives blessings, the Rebbe gives cake, he gives shirayim, the Rebbe gives all kinds of stuff. By us, we're very hesitant. What can we give the Rebbe? It's a whole different thing. Anyway, so I'm telling like this. That I told him the story, that there was a guy who I know who was having an issue in his family. He was having a problem in the family. It was a very serious issue to the extent that the family as a whole was paralyzed. They couldn't really function properly because this kid had this issue, was affecting all the other kids and that, and the parents didn't know what to do. They were looking for some kind of solution, and they couldn't find one. So they called a couple of people. They called somebody. Again, I know who it is, and he called them and he said, "Could you help us with this?" He said, "I'd love to help you." He said, "But I can't. I just what you need, I can't provide." I'm sorry. The guy was lost. The kid needs help. The family needs help. He doesn't know what to do. So he goes to the oil. He goes to the Rebbe's oil, and he goes into the Rebbe and he tells the Rebbe like this: "Rebbe, I need a Polish meifus. I need a Polish meifus. I need some kind of miracle. Because whenever Polish people come, my wife has a neighbor in Manchester, okay, and their daughter was married. I actually saw it when it happened. I was standing there. I was in Kotel. Their daughter had been married for 10 years, did not have children. So the Rebbe was going to the oil, and they got special permission to stand by the door when it was the later years. The Rebbe came out the side door straight to the car. So the Rebbe would hand nickels to a couple of kids over there. They let them, only you couldn't walk there unless you had permission. And then he came all the way from Manchester to New York to be able to ask the Rebbe for a blessing for his daughter. Okay. Anyway, he stood there, and when the Rebbe got out, it was a few seconds. The Rebbe came out. The Rebbe looked at him. Rabbi Klein actually introduced him, said who he is, because he's a very well-known person who comes from a very famous Rabbanish family. And he told the Rebbe about his daughter that he needs a blessing. So the Rebbe was talking to him. While the Rebbe was talking, the Rebbe was putting nickels into his hand. The Rebbe put 3 nickels into his hand. She had triplets the next year. Okay, so this guy, Polish, no problem. Whatever they ask for, right? Yeah. So, so they came to it. So this guy, he came to the Rebbe. He came to the oil, and he said, "Rebbe, I need a Polish style miracle." He told me within 24 hours. Within 24 hours, the guy who he had called and asked, "Could you help me?" and told him, "I wish I could, but I can't," called him back. He said, "I have a solution for you." And it worked perfectly. He told the Rebbe, "I need a Polish meifus." Delivered. Okay, you should know, there's an address you can go to. Anyway, this guy found out. Anyway, okay, so I happened to mention this story to him. The next morning, he's supposed to come back, he left in the 9, 10 o'clock. He's supposed to come back about 1 o'clock to pick up the stuff and go to the airport. About 11:30, he walks through the door. "What's going on? What are you doing here?" He said, "Enke Rebbe." You have to know how he said, "You're Rebbe, you're Rebbe." I said, "What are you talking about? Enke Rebbe." It's like a very, pressed away of saying, pushed away. Enke Rebbe. I said, what are you talking about? He said, "You remember the story you told me last night?" I said, "What story?" He said, "The Polish." He said, "I heard the story." He said, "When I was passing by, after it said goodnight, I was walking back to the bedroom. I passed by the Rebbe's picture. And I said, 'Rebbe, I am Polish.'" He said, a Chabad Chassid needed help, and he said, he invoked, our formula. He said, You know, you owe it to me. I'm posed. I need a miracle. I said, so what happened? He said, I was just sitting in the office, and they were giving me the instructions. While after like an hour of the instructions, there's a knock on the door. I open the door, and it's the woman who's the insurance person for the hospital. And she says, I don't know who you know, but I can tell you that I'm in this position for 20 years. Never once did this happen. That after the insurance denied, and denied not once, not twice, but 3 times, that they should call us out of the blue and say 2 more weeks. That never happened before. So he said, I'm going back myself. My daughter's staying till after Pesach. I'll see you after Pesach. Enke Rebbe. My wife met him twice already by the oil.
Blame him.
He knows where to go.